Hi, and welcome to another one of my old school blues guitar lessons on the basics of electric blues guitar in the old school style. Just getting started, these lessons are for you to help you learn some of the absolute basics if you want to play guitar like the guys did in the 50s and 60s. Anyway, in this lesson we're going to take a look at some more rhythm patterns. A couple lessons ago I showed you some shuffle rhythms and also showed you some single string rhythms. These are some ideas that you can use to back up somebody else instead of just playing the lead all the time, which a lot of guys just want to do. You should have a good vocabulary of different styles of rhythm playing. And in this lesson, I'm going to show you 10 really basic, fundamental ideas. A couple of them aren't so basic, but they're cool, so I'm going to show them to you anyway, that you can use. One of the most common, just getting started here with number one, is what I call a double stop rhythm, and this is something you hear in a lot of old blues stuff, especially recordings by Sonny Boy Williamson, Little Walter, a lot of different guys. In the key of A, which is our reference key, it goes something like this. And then you can move that, so if we're basing it on the first position bar chord, so we're playing this over an A. If we're an A, and then when the song goes to the 4, or the next chord, which is going to be D, we just move it up here. Back to the 1. Then when the song goes to the E, or the 5 chord, all the way up here. 4, 1. And that's a real basic pattern. You can use this in a lot of different ways. You don't just have to play this all the time. If you watch my videos on the guitars behind Sonny Boy Williamson, Little Walter, you'll hear a lot of variations on this. But anyway, the basic rhythm, if you're just getting into this, is put my first finger on the 5th fret, getting the 2nd and 3rd strings. And then I'm going to hammer on my 2nd finger onto the 6th fret of the 3rd string and pick both the 2nd and 3rd strings. And do it twice. So it's 1, 2. And then I'm going to take my ring finger and flatten it out over the 7th fret, 2nd and 3rd strings. Just back and forth. Move it over the 4. Same thing between the 10th and 12th frets, hammering on to the 11th fret of the 3rd string. That's just a real basic rhythm. Another thing, when you're doing that, if you want to play in the key of E, since you've got the open, you're just going to kind of hammer on from the open 3rd string to the 1st fret of the 3rd string and picking the open 2nd string. And that's one variation of using that lick that you have to play it a little differently. So that I call a shuffle rhythm. Another kind of double stop rhythm is something you hear, at least I've heard a lot in Eddie Taylor's playing. I think the first place I heard it was in acoustic blues, Blind Lemon Jefferson. That's probably where the electric guys got it from. But let's say you're playing a rhythm like this in A. When you go to the 4, instead of playing, you can play something like this. Go to the 5. And that's another rhythm. You could play it over the 1 too. So let's say we're in A. We could play this. Robert Lockwood, if you listen to some of his stuff, he'll do something like that. This lick, you play it. Let's just do the lick as the 1. So here's A. We really don't play this over the first position blues box. If you want to play it over the 1, you're going to have to move it up here over the A position, or the 2nd position bar chord in A, between the 12th and the 14th frets. To show you the lick, it's easier. Let's show you in D, which would be played over the 4 if we were in A. And what I'm doing here is sliding into this double stop, which is that's a second position D bar chord. And I've got my first finger on the 5th fret of the 1st string, and I take my ring finger. Actually, I use my 2nd finger, and I'm going to slide from the 6th to the 7th frets on the 2nd string, and then pick up on that double stop. So that's the basic position. You could play it like this, but it's much easier, I think, unless you have smaller hands. I got big hands, so this is easy. So I'm sliding on the 2nd string, and then I'm getting that double stop between the 5th fret of the 1st string, 7th fret of the 2nd string twice. And then I'm taking my pinky and making this double stop, but I'm keeping that first finger anchored on the 1st string. So my pinky's going to the 8th fret, and then I'm picking the 8th and 7th frets. And then I'm just walking down rather, by putting my ring finger on the 7th fret of the 1st string. And then back to that double stop. I vary the rhythm there. That's a Robert Lockwood thing. And then if you're want to play it over the 1, you got to move it all the way up here. Usually, a lot of times, I use that when I'm going from the 5 to the 4 to the 1. So I might play a tune at the 1. Let me just play a whole verse through one time. I'll use this rhythm. Throw in a 9th chord. And then to the 4. Back to the 1. The end of the progression. So this little, you can move it over any second position bar chord is where I use it. So if you're looking for it, here's the 5. This is A, first position bar chord, the 1. There's the 4, which is a D. 2, frets up, 5, which is an E. Make that shape. Remember 1st and 2nd fingers. Kind of a neat thing. You could also do it on the 2nd and 3rd strings like this. And there I'm sliding into the E from the 12th to the 13th fret on the 3rd string. And it's out of this position. 1st finger on the 12th fret of the 2nd string, 2nd finger on the 13th fret. And then putting my pinky on the 15th fret of the 2nd string, and I'm picking the 2nd and 3rd strings together, and then just walking it to the 14th fret, doing the same thing over the D. Whoop. And then back into the 1. So that's another rhythm pattern that you can use, and you hear it quite a bit in early electric blues. Another one that's kind of less common, but I like it anyway, and it's kind of easy, is one that I pick up from a song. Oh, I'm looking at my notes. Smiley Lewis, from his version of Too Many Drivers at the Wheel. And he does this thing, it's kind of a 7th chord shape. If you go to G, this is a G7th. If you don't know your chords yet, you should make sure you go through the 7th chords, 9th chords. Those are the basics for electric blues playing. And you probably shouldn't do too much lead stuff until you learn the chords. This is an F shape, G, which is really over the 1st position bar chord. And I'm just taking my F chord and moving it up 2 frets. And the 7th, I put the pinky on the 6th fret of the 2nd string. And in his tune, Too Many Drivers at the Wheel, Smiley Lewis does this riff that goes something like this. Up there a couple times. But he plays it mostly over the 1 and the 4. You could play it over the 5. taking the pinky and putting it on this, I'm playing in G now. If I do the same thing in A, I can show you that. These are all movable. You can move these around to any chord, any key. I'm putting my first finger while I'm in that chord shape on the 5th fret of the 2nd string. Then I'm sliding it to the 8th fret, or the 6th fret, 5th to 6th. Back. Over the C, first position C bar chord. That's another double stop kind of rhythm that you could play, especially if you got a bass player who's playing something cool. Another example, this is number 4 of that Smiley Lewis thing, is from a tune by Buddy Guy and Junior Wells called Ships on the Ocean. I think they play it in B in the original. I'm going to move it to A, and they just do that riff we just did in G for Smiley Lewis. We do it in reverse. It goes something like this. It's a slow tune. Go to the 4. And then he does this typical Buddy Guy Junior Wells thing, but this time we're just going, we're going to start in the 7th shape. And I think he's leading in with the little double stop here on the 1st and 2nd and 3rd strings, going from the 4th and 5th frets, 4th fret of the 2nd string, 5th fret of the 3rd string, kind of a little lead in, or it could just be picking that without sliding in. And you can really take your ring finger off, that makes it a lot easier. Sometimes it sounds like he's ending it on the 7th fret of the 4th string. Something like that. Go to the 4. Something like that. And that's another cool little variation on that double stop type lick. Let's move on. Another example, number 6, of a basic rhythm in electric blues. This one you don't hear as much, but it's still really useful. And I call it a boogie rhythm. I'm going to show you 2 variations. One is from a tune called Feeling Good by Junior Parker in the 1950s. And he does this little rhythm like this. That's your standard boogie, which you can keep going forever and just stay on the 1. In the tune Feeling Good, he goes to the 4 and even to the 5 later, but that riff is played over the 1. The way I'm doing that, the way I hear it on the Junior Parker tune, is he's kind of picking up, getting the 2nd and 3rd string. He's got an A chord, he's just holding his first finger over the 4th through 1st strings on the 2nd fret. He's picking the 2nd and 3rd strings. And then with his pinky getting the 5th fret of the 4th string. And then that chord, this time, he's either playing 3 strings or maybe even just the 4th and 3rd string. You can do all kinds of rhythmic variations on that. So if you're playing a tune in the key of A and someone wants to play a boogie, you can just get going. Keep that going as long as you can. Another variation on that is a kind of a John Lee Hooker type thing. Now John Lee Hooker played in open tunings and he plays it differently, but you can imitate what he was playing in the key of A and other keys as well. And one way is to play something like this. type rhythm. Again, a lot of those songs that he did just stayed on the one the whole time. And what I'm doing is hitting the open fifth, and then real quick, 3/4 on the fifth, and back to the open. So it's open fifth, 3/4 on the fifth, open. And in between, I'm just upstroking on the A chord. Some guys do variations. And you're just playing around on the bass notes and keeping that first position. You can do all kinds of, little boogie riffs. But those are a couple that I use and that I know of. Going to the 7th example, we're going to go to the key of C. And I'm going to show you what I call a 7th chord rhythm. Now I've got specific lessons on the chords. 7th, 9th, and all the others that you hear commonly in older blues recordings. But this is one that's kind of a basic, and it's in the key of C. And I'm going to show you the riff as it's used in a tune called Tramp by Lowell Folsom. This was recorded in the mid 60s, I think, late 60s. And he does this riff in a C7th chord. So C7th, if you don't know your basic chords, you need to learn those. C chord with the 7th thrown in, and you hear that. And you can do a lot of rhythms with 7th chords. And here's a basic one from the song called Tramp. It goes like this. That's pretty much it. It plays the whole song. And what I'm doing is 1, 2, 3, strumming the first downstroke, letting it hang just a little, and then upstroke, downstroke, and then just these little choppy downstrokes to finish it off. Now I'm muting with my right hand palm to kind of dampen the sound a little bit. Then when I move it to go to the 4, which would be an F7, I just take that shape 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until my ring finger is on the F, which is the 8th fret of the 5th string. Then for the 5, I do the same thing. Move the ring finger to the 5, which is a G, 10th fret of the 5th string. One variation of that, you can throw in a little climbing bass. To do that, going from the 3rd fret of the 6th string, 1, 3, 1, 3 on the 5th string. And if I played over the 4, same thing. So that is a kind of a funky C7th rhythm. That's one you can play in other keys, like an A. If we played an A, but I think it sounds best with that C7th shape. Another rhythm. This is one for a slower tune. This is one that it's an Otis Rush tune called I Can't Stop, and he does this real basic backing rhythm. And you hear this in other tunes. I've heard it in a tune by T-Bone Walker. I've heard it in, I think, some Magic Sam here and there, Lowell Folsom. It goes like this. So for in the key of A, the basic riff is. 7th chord. We could take it all the way from the 5. And the basic idea is starting on the 1. So here's my first position, A bar chord, 5th fret of the 6th string, 4 to 7 on the 5th string. Then I get a double stop, 3rd and 4th strings on the 5th fret. So the whole first part. Then there's a couple different things you can do here. You can just hammer on with the ring finger on one string and pick the 2nd or 3rd and 4th strings together. Hammer on the 7th fret of the 4th string. Or you can hammer a double stop on both the 2nd and 3rd and 4th strings of the 7th fret. So like this. There's the 1 string. There's 2 strings. In that same pattern, you just move it over to play over the 4 or the D. 5, 4. It's the same pattern that you play. So if you're playing a slow tune and you want to do something besides play 9th chords or something else, there's another idea for you. That is example number 8. Now before we go, I've given you a lot of rhythm ideas. I'm going to give you a couple more single string bass rhythm type things that I forgot to include in my original lesson. One is a real cool lick in a tune called My Back Scratcher by Frank Frost. And he does this thing in F. So we're playing over the first position bar chord in F. And he does this little riff like this. Is the F. He's going to hammer on from the 1st to the 3rd fret on the 5th string. Then go back and forth between the 1st fret of the 4th string and the 3rd fret of the 5th string. And then to the 3rd fret of the 4th string. Back to the 1. Then when you move it, you can just move it over. Or you can move up here, play over the B flat. This is a B flat too. 2nd position bar chord. Then for the 5, we could go all the way here and play over the C to the B flat, or we could play here. Remember, this is a 2nd position bar chord. There's a C, so we could do to the B flat. To the 1. So there's another little single string rhythm pattern. One last one. This is from an Otis Rush tune. It's called It Takes Time. And it's a very similar rhythm. We'll do it in the key of A. I think originally it's an F sharp. But he does something like this in that same pattern over the first position blues box. Thing where he goes from the 5th fret of the 6th string, 7th fret of the 5th string, 5th fret of the 4th string, and then 7th fret, 5th fret on the 4th string, 7th fret of the 5th string. And in that position, there's all kinds of variations. Earlier I showed you the Buddy Guy, Junior Wells thing like this. Or you could reverse it. You can it up here over the first position, D bar chord, but I usually play it over the second position. So this is a D. I'm just playing the notes right over that chord shape. So there are 10 more rhythm ideas, real basics. And if you can get, the single string runs, some chord ideas. Now, I didn't show you a lot of chord rhythms, like there's ninth chord rhythms, stuff like that. If you go to my videos on the different chords that you need for electric blues guitar, they're in the same series of fundamentals. And you can find lots of ideas there for using chords as rhythms. But I wanted to show you some shuffle rhythms, some single string rhythm, some double stop rhythm, boogie rhythms, and as much other stuff as I could. Those are all the real fundamentals. And again, as a guitar player, the more different ways you can play, the more different sounds, the more variety you'll have in the songs that you play. Especially like if you like to play jam sessions, you get a lot of guys that just know one basic blues thing. If you know a bunch of them, you can kick songs off and get some pretty good jams started in lots of different ways. If you have any questions, comments, let me know. Hopefully this is helpful. Let me know if it is or if it isn't. And I have one more series, one more video I'm going to put out, and it's going to show you some different places on the neck where you can play. Go back to soloing. And also the third blues box, which we haven't talked about. See you then.